Dr. Hobbs.
Hi.
I was taken with the beginning of the conference this morning as we await election results, and there was a suggestion that, yeah, we should set that aside, that the conversation should continue about learning. It strikes me that your work with media literacy is really about this intersection of the classroom with the world. And so talk to me a little bit about your work and the social and emotional issues that you're confronting.
Thank you so much. I do feel that when we think about schools of the future, and we ask kids to imagine the schools of the future, they use all of their life experiences to imagine what it could be. They are YouTube consumers, they are TikTok creators, they are internet searchers, they are video game players. And so, in some ways, I think I'm always trying to think about the relationship between the classroom and the culture, between what happens in school and what happens outside of school. And I think too much of our thinking has kind of kept those things separate when really if school is to prepare us for the world outside the classroom, then that connection needs to be seamless, and one way to do that is to build digital and media literacy competencies.
It seems especially critical given kind of the landscape, contemporary landscape today. It's as if media literacy got a huge boost with an election some time ago. Talk to me a little bit, again, about this intersection of the real world and the classroom as you work at the University of Rhode Island with educators.
Well, all over the world.
All over the world.
All over the world,
Right.
The fake news phenomenon has created a real momentum for digital and media literacy, and librarians who specialize in information literacy, and art educators who bring visual literacy, and computer educators who bring computer usage and coding practices. We're all recognizing that the rise of propaganda and disinformation has created a sense of great urgency about developing the kind of cognitive and the kind of social and emotional skills we need to manage with a world that is increasingly difficult to figure out who do we trust, what do we trust. I've been really interested in a phenomenon that I'm seeing with my own students, and I feel like we haven't figured it out yet. It started when I started demonstrating how I search online, as I model my own inquiry practices as a learner. I'm a lifelong learner, and I model. When a student asks me a question I don't know, I say, well, let's go find out, and I model my practices. Sometimes I have discovered that my Google is not your Google, that my Netflix is not your Netflix, that the Google search engine that I've trained to use, that collects my data and reports back to me, produces results for my use that when my students try searching, they don't achieve the same results. Right. And I feel like algorithmic personalization that we experience every day in filtered search, in internet search. Google started personalized search only 10 years ago, so it's a pretty new thing for us. Personalized advertising, which delivers me customized ads based on the data that I've thrown off about clothing and shopping and whatever. And even in recommendation engines that offer differential pricing to people, to different kinds of users. These are three ordinary practices of personalization about which many of us teachers are not well informed.
Right.
And the lack of transparency that we have, the sense of magic that it seems to have, really is a problem. And that's why I was so glad to hear many of the other presenters talk about transparency as a key objective. How do we pull back the curtain to help all of us understand the algorithmic environments that we live in?
Spectacular. You strike at something that I think is sort of key, and that is the role of our classroom and practicing educators at all levels to really engage. You mentioned, first of all, sort of the interdisciplinary nature of all of this, But I'm taken with sort of the freshness of the challenge in many respects and what the ramifications are for our current teaching force, much less the pipeline of preparation that's in process.
Yeah. One of the things that's unique about opportunities for pedagogy is, and this is something Avi talked about as well, is there are real opportunities for global learning as we try to understand algorithms. I'll tell you a story about how we tried to do that. I have a colleague at the University of Würzburg, and she and I are both thinking about, okay, some part of media literacy we might have to call algorithm literacy. And so how do we teach students about the way in which algorithms shape the information we receive from search engines? So we did a kind of an experiment together. She asked her students at the University of Würzburg to log into Google and to keyword search 3 terms: Germany, United States of America, and Finland. And then to take a screenshot of the first 5 results. And then to post that screenshot up to a digital bulletin board. We used Padlet. Her students, and we did it on the same day, right? The same keywords, but everyone was logged in. And then we had a great data set to analyze. So the German and American students took pieces of the data and looked at the patterns. What were the similarities and differences? Did everyone get the same information? And in fact, we saw huge differences. We saw American students who, when they keyword searched in Germany, got news from Al Jazeera and RT as the main information source. And we saw German students who, when they typed in United States of America, got their main news from Al Jazeera and RT, and not the New York Times, and not the main German newspapers. So we had a lively discussion about how there were some gender differences between the boys and the girls in the types of content they received. And we realized that geography can also be bridged as we start to recognize how our geolocations shape the nature of the information ecosystem.
Really fascinating. One of the things that, first of all, I should share, when we first came up here, I arrived today with crisp notes for this conversation, and after listening to some of our earlier speakers, I wound up with a little messier agenda. Again, a pretty inspiring conversation in advance. I was taken with Cecilia's remarks about the importance of student voice as a community that is integrated and involved in this. I'm curious a little bit, as I think about the art and science of media literacy, addressing it with young learners. I also see it as maybe a dual generation challenge in a fashion. So I'm curious both about families and students specifically in this narrative of literacy and sort of address.
You know, thank you so much for asking this question. Here's the most powerful media production tool that any 5-year-old ever had, right? A way to learn how to be a documentary filmmaker, a way to learn how to be a visual artist, a way to learn how to be a good public speaker, a way to learn to think about how sequences of words, language, numbers, images, and interactivity allow us to create and share meaning, to understand each other. I hope that youth media production becomes a vital part of how Israeli children learn to represent their knowledge as they learn about themselves, their families, their communities, the world. Youth media is a really powerful tool for learning, and as you say, it brings together our thinking across our emotional identities, our personal and family identities, and our cognitive skills. If you want the one best pedagogy to promote critical thinking about media, you must learn how to make media. That's the secret. And so now it's my turn to ask you a question, Ron, is it right?
Yes.
You know, I feel very proud to have gotten to know you over the last day because I was at the very first South by Southwest, now 10 years ago, and I've been coming to your conference for many years over the last 10 years. And I think that I want to understand better why unlike other technology conferences, your participants are super diverse. They are artists and filmmakers. They are policy leaders. They are community and business professionals, right? They are venture capitalists. They are technologists. They are creative, unclassifiable people. Why is that diversity of stakeholders so important to you as thinking about the future of education?
I appreciate it very much, and I think I share a lot in common with Avi and Cecilia, and a worldview that connecting a global community of innovators is a great path to impact. You know, for our part, at South by Southwest, for years we've run a large music festival. We've had a technology conference for 25 years now, a large film festival. I'm super proud that the education event is celebrating its 10th birthday. When we looked at the education landscape, it felt to us like it was very important to build as big a tent as possible for different perspectives to be engaged. So we began as a practitioner conference with a lot of K through 12 and higher ed community attending. And we asked ourselves, who isn't there? And so we leaned into entrepreneurs and policymakers, parents and students, foundations, and we fundamentally believe that the richer and more diverse the community, the more impactful the outcomes. And I say again, I know it's a shared belief that we hold with our friends at Mindcet, and why we're so happy to be here today.
You know, I have to say that the quality of the teachers who came to South by Southwest to participate in the conference was so inspiring to me. Last year, I met two history teachers, Emily and Emily. And these teachers had, over the last 5 years, figured out how to integrate media and digital literacy into their history curriculum. And it was thrilling to see the quality of the work and the student artifacts and the design of the learning and the insights that they developed from the bottom up. So I feel like one of the things that's exciting about your conference is the way it brings big people with big ideas at the top, and then people who've got big ideas that came from their lived experience in the classroom working with teachers. And I think that's partly what makes this conference so exciting, but that's partly how we'll find the future of educational technology.
Thank you all. Renee, thank you. Appreciate it.